Hello everybody. I wanted to thank you for tuning in for my first video. I think it's going to be a little bit of a doozy. And if you hear noise in the background, it is because my son is home. And if I want to record a video, then I have to do it whenever I find a moment. So I wanted to say, have you guys noticed the absolute garbage fire that is online drama about autism? Particularly, I would say, since the Trump RFK Jr. press releases. There are a lot of buzzwords out there like Tylenol, cure, treatment, acceptance. Some 1930s style language is definitely floating around too. And it's all going absolutely viral. It's kind of getting nasty out there. It's convoluted, and it's actually what I'm seeing to be pretty borderline harmful to everybody involved. In 2025, there seems to be a lot of nuance to being autistic that I wasn't really noticing before. Tension within the community has been building up, I would say, since the removal of the Asperger syndrome from the current DSM-5 in 2013. There's been a lot of strife on who gets to speak about the autistic experience and who struggles more than the other. I think a good place to start would be, who are the parties at odds? So obviously we do have self-advocating autistic people themselves. Sometimes they're older adolescents, but usually they're adults. You see there's a range from self-proclaimed neurodivergent folks to legitimately diagnosed autistic levels 1 and sometimes 2. People who are most active speaking on this topic in the online social media sphere. But here's the thing. The autism community doesn't just include autistic people. It also includes the parents of autistic people, children, and adults. And this is where advocacy and awareness about autism has become tricky. If I can kind of condense this down, generally, I'm seeing 3 distinct groups of people using their voice to speak on behalf of autistic children, typically. Definitely concerning the current structure of the spectrum. So parents of very young children, think toddlers, pre-K, that have been identified as being developmentally at risk or exhibiting higher functioning level 1 or 2 autism traits. Many of these children who receive early childhood education supports will go on into late childhood and adolescence to verbally speak. They can meaningfully advocate for themselves, and they can navigate our world to varying degrees of independence with or without supports. Many of these children who started out as presenting nonverbal will eventually do things like drive cars, work a job, go to college, build and maintain relationships, and maybe even start families of their own. Another group I'm seeing are the parents of younger children. And, we're looking at, maybe like before 10 years old. So, toddlers pre-K, like through elementary school. And they are definitely, without a doubt, presenting on the spectrum, level 2, sometimes level 3. And they are already at such a young age showing to have very high support needs. These kids, like I said, land, level 2 autism, level 3 autism, and it is typically suspected and clinically substantiated, usually, that they will continue to be nonverbal, continue to be limited verbal, and that they will continue to need moderate to extensive support for any kind of life navigation. This is where we started with my son, who is now 14. And I will expand a little later on why I'm making the distinction between like these groups of parents who have younger children. But in the modern day, early childhood education resources are available to all children and their parents, which I find that to be almost more important. In order to provide as much training and therapy as needed to improve a child's walk with autism early on. And like I said before, some children will respond really well to therapies and they will develop further along than others who will continue to need more moderate or severe, significant levels of support. The third group of parents I want to highlight is the group I currently belong to. I would say that this group comfortably has children that are over 10 years old, teenagers, and adults, the majority of them being level 3 autism, generally nonverbal or having limited verbal communication skills. Sometimes they have varying levels of learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, or other comorbid conditions. Like my son, for example, he has level 3 autism, he's nonverbal. He also has tics, OCD and tics, which, is people would be familiar with Tourette's syndrome. We're still in the middle of diagnosis for that. So he doesn't have that distinction yet, but we're working on it. Many of the people that are in this category, and I'm going to call them people because they're not always children. Sometimes it's teenagers, it's adults. So we kind of have to lump everybody in. They engage in property destruction, physical aggression, struggle with incontinence, require 24/7 protective supervision and caregiving. These are teenagers and adults who cannot safely navigate the community despite receiving many years of therapies and access to resources. They certainly cannot meaningfully advocate for themselves in nuanced or complex social matters that affect them directly. They lack the cognitive capacity to safely and independently navigate the daily living skills needed to function on the most basic level. Now, this is the subgroup of people on the spectrum who have parent caregivers that advocate that I now belong to. I think I've painted a pretty clear picture. The spectrum houses a diversity of ability and disability, basically to glaringly opposite extremes. So let me try to tie some of this together. It's clear now in 2025 that the online world is a reflection of our society. I've participated myself in a lot of infighting between subgroups on the spectrum. The fighting seems to be centered around, one, if autism should be cured, and two, speaking frankly, who and what category struggles more in their autistic life experience. There seems to be this tug of war of who is more poorly off than the other. There are the parent caregivers who describe their own child's neurodivergence as a superpower, or they are autistic themselves and they describe their neurodivergence as a superpower, and they're grateful to have this autistic superpower. Those are, usually level 1s. Then you see typically level 2 and 3, usually the parents who wish for a cure for autism. And the whole cure topic is really big right now. And honestly, it's a whole other video that is just a massive discussion with a lot of nuance that I feel like I can't really get into on my first try at making a YouTube video. So moving on, the parents of level 3 autistic and teenagers, those who are attributing these qualifiers of profound and severe, are desperate for distinction. Many started calling their son or daughter's autism classic autism to distinguish their level of autism from the Hollywood portrayal when shows like Young Sheldon, Big Bang Theory, and Atypical became popular. More recently, I'm seeing those who have said classic autism have shifted into adopting the qualifying adjectives profound and severe, particularly after the rise of social media or TikTok portrayals of autism. It feels like just saying level 3 doesn't seem to do this level of disability justice in terms of true understanding. And if you don't have a basic understanding, if society as a whole doesn't have basic understanding, then you can't have awareness that leads to acceptance, and acceptance that leads to changes in the world that benefits this group of autism without meeting those requirements. And so as parent caregivers of the profound and severe level 3 autistics, we're seeing that society as a whole seems to better comprehend the extreme nature of this level of disability, in particular this subgroup, much better when we're using the descriptive qualifiers, profound severe. We're making this distinction because we feel like we have to. Otherwise, our teenage and adult children are getting socially lost under the vast umbrella of the spectrum and how we are culturally, as a collective, viewing autism as a whole. So tell me why. Why does saying profound and severe to describe a subgroup within the spectrum just seem to grind the ever-loving gears of people online? And that's Bubba in the background. The people I'm seeing get mad about it are usually higher functioning autistics. Some are the parents of higher functioning children that have the autism as a superpower mentality. I've seen level 1 autistics express that they feel like they constantly have to prove their ability and intelligence in the world to get out from the shadow that autism spectrum disorder is this major disability. They're fighting to feel like they can get the support that they need to navigate our world without being treated like less than for needing the support. But then on the flip side, more than not, online, I'm seeing higher functioning autistic people becoming very defensive in the opposite way if they feel like their disability and their struggles aren't properly validated, usually in response to profound severe parent caregivers highlighting the realities of profoundly affected, low functioning autistic people. This defensiveness seems to be coming from a place of threat, as if their standing as disabled somehow becomes less valid if somebody more autistic than them simply exists. And because those who actually are profoundly affected, usually, literally, cannot speak for themselves, it's really easy for higher functioning neurodivergents who are defensive to dismiss the realities expressed by parent caregivers, stating that because the parent caregivers aren't autistic, therefore they don't know what it's like to be autistic and aren't qualified to speak on it. They really go as far as to say that parent caregivers do not know what their children really think or need. Maybe, I'll give it to you. Sometimes that's a very small percentage true. Parent caregivers will be the first to admit that we are oftentimes playing a guessing game. But I'll tell you what, we are the closest, most likely people to know what nonverbal, severely affected level 3s need because we are there with unconditional love 24/7. There's nobody else for this subgroup of autistic people I've highlighted here that can say that. I haven't come across a single solitary person arguing online that profound and severe shouldn't be used as qualifiers for a subgroup of level 3s that can also say that they've given significant and intense support in all areas to a member of the subgroup 24/7 for any number of years. Because if they had, we wouldn't be arguing. We're having a lost in translation issue between people on the spectrum and people representing those on the spectrum. Non-speaking, level 3, significant support needing profoundly affected autistic individuals obviously do not make up the entirety of the spectrum. All we're trying to say is that they do deserve a place at the societal table and to contribute to the overarching discussions and topics that affect them. But because they lack the cognition and the ability to meaningfully advocate in that way, the closest people to them, parent caregivers, take up that torch. So to tell parent caregivers that they cannot accurately describe and distinguish this subgroup's autism from the rest of the spectrum, it feels like it's the same as telling them to shut up and stay in the background. If they can't speak for themselves, then they can't. You know what I mean? Even if there's somebody willing right there who spends every waking moment with them, nope, you can't talk. You know what I mean? So what do? How do we all get along? How do we share the spectrum? I think it starts with agreeing on a few points as objective truths first. One, nobody is saying that level 1 and 2 autistic people don't struggle and experience a harsh world. We know you do. In fact, I would say level 2 autistic people are oftentimes more lost in this sort of like power struggle that's going on between higher functioning level 1s and the parent caregivers of the most severely affected level 3s. It kind of seems like the level 2s get more lost in the shuffle of like, speaking of awareness, we know that you struggle. We know you experience a harsh world. We hope that you utilize your higher level of functioning to advocate for yourself. We hope you're outspoken. Ultimately, in my opinion, that's a net benefit for everyone. I am always looking for different insights and perspectives so that I might improve my son's quality of life. But I think we also need to come to a societal consensus that there are indeed different, distinct levels of disability between those on the spectrum who actually can advocate for themselves and those who are the most vulnerable among us who literally cannot speak or communicate a single word by any method. We need to agree that some people, like it or not, are more autistic than others. Those people deserve their systemic and social advocacy to be fulfilled by the people who know their needs inside and out, aka their parent caregivers. The other thing I think that we have to find some agreement on is that high-functioning autistics do objectively, in comparison to their profound severe counterparts, possess and enjoy access to the world and a quality of life that is far more fulfilling than their counterparts. Now, is it to say that this access and enjoyment isn't also shared by seasons or moments, phases of despair and frustration and being misunderstood? Of course not. This is a human experience, and it isn't easy for any of us. Autism does mostly suck, and it sucks because our world isn't structured for it. Our world is complicated, and it's tiered in its difficulty. And I would be the first to look at any living situation, any situation where a higher functioning level 1 autistic person is trying to get by in this world, and I can say, wow, I absolutely validate your struggle. I really, really do. If it's hard for me, and then I know it's got to be hard for you. But objectively, parent caregivers are asserting that those negative seasons or moments for higher functioning autistics are nothing compared to being non-verbally and severely disabled by autism. Then you'll have the higher functioning autistics in the comment sections come back with the assertion that parent caregivers cannot possibly know how hard autism is. And we cannot speak on it because we don't have neurodivergence. And then the parent caregivers will come back with, how can you say that I don't know what it's like? I'm living it with my adult child 24/7 from the day that they were born, from the day they were diagnosed. It's been decades, it's been years. Of course I know what it's like, and you have it easier. And the other person, the high functioning person is like, how dare you say that I have it easy? It's just, We go round and round. We get nasty with each other. We try to hurt each other. We all are trying to win the argument, right? So what do we do, you guys? Hey, bud. What do? Do we push for a split of the spectrum up into more concise, separate diagnosis categories? Can we find a way to coexist when the use of qualifying adjectives, profound and severe, upsets one end of the spectrum, but the level 3 subgroups advocates are never going to stop using the distinction? I'm never going to stop saying it because I can provide a solid argument for the need. So how do we bridge this? That's sort of what I'd like to end this on. I know this is a video that I'm leaving very open-ended, but I hope that, maybe we can have some good conversations about it. And I would invite anybody to tell me what they truly think. And if you stuck with me this long, I would love to thank you. I would invite you back if I ever get around to making another video. We'll see how it goes. Thank you so much and have a wonderful week.